Today we're going to be talking with Damion Lupo about qualified retirement plans. He's the founder of the eQRP company, the author of 12 books on personal investing and retirement strategies, and he's also the host of the Financial Underdogs podcast. Please welcome Damion Lupo. All right, Damion, thanks so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Good. So you and I first connected at Dealmaker Live conference, probably about 2 years ago now. You were there with eQRP as one of the sponsors. I've since opened up my own QRP with you guys last year. I've completed my first 2 real estate investments. So thank you for your help on that. And I was actually hoping to maybe dive into it a little bit more. You're the man that knows everything about QRP, and hoping to ask you a few questions about it, educate people on what it's all about, what are the advantages of it, and really take that next step beyond, the self-directed IRA. Sound like a plan?
Sounds awesome. Yeah, let's do it.
Great. So when I was doing some background work on you, what I didn't know is that you've actually been the founder of 50 companies, which blows my mind. I mean, I thought I was doing pretty well. I'm on number 7, but 50 companies. I thought maybe we could start off by you giving us a little bit of background on how you ended up at the eQRP and what that journey's looked like for you.
So this all started really just as an entrepreneur. So when you start 7 companies or 70 companies or a company, there's something that you have, you're like, you insist on solving a problem. If an entrepreneur that says, "Oh, I'm going to just go start business because I want to make money," generally it's not very sustainable. Yeah. And usually there has to be a fire because business is hard. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of pain. There's a lot of scar tissue involved. And so I started doing that a long time ago. I mean, 4 decades ago, really, when I was a kid, I started off doing business because I was told, no, there's not enough money. And that was my first problem. We were broke. And so I said, "Oh, I'm going to solve this." And so I was doing every possible thing and running businesses. And then when I left Alaska, where I grew up, I ended up starting an insurance company, and that led me to reading a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And after I read that book, a buddy and I decided to buy a rental house with my Visa card, and that shifted things from insurance to real estate, because at the time I thought it'd be great to be Donald Trump. I'd read his book, and he was a big real estate guy. So that was the beginning of that whole phase. And then there was probably a dozen different real estate companies. And I did that, made tens of millions of dollars doing that. And then I lost tens of millions of dollars in 2008. And so I went through this whole cycle, which is really interesting to go through. I call it interesting because it's been more than a decade since I did that. In the middle of it, it's hell on earth. It's excruciating pain. Oh. So that after that happened, one of the things that I realized was maybe just chasing money is not what I should be doing. I was solving problems, but I was way too focused on the money. And I love money. And anybody that says money doesn't matter you're delusional, because money does matter. It's like saying oxygen doesn't matter. That makes sense until somebody puts you under the water at the pool, and then it's the only thing that matters. So I said, okay, well, what am I needing? What should I do? I could do a million things. What should I do? And I started looking around and I realized I wanted to teach, and I was a teacher, but it needed to be teaching from things that I did, because I think the best teachers are the ones that do the thing. And so I started digging, and I said, well, I understand real estate, I understand investing. And then I saw my parents retire, and I watched them just living in fear and pain because they played by the system and showed up broke. And basically they were slaves to the government system with pensions and Social Security. And I thought, this sucks. And that's most people's experience. So when I literally found out about the qualified retirement plans and self-directed, this is more than a decade ago. And I said, this is really kind of cool. And so I went deep into it. I didn't just say, that's cool, let me see if I can sell something. I said, let me dig. And so 10 years ago, I wrote a book called the QRP book. And this is about qualified plans. Writing a book on a technical thing in the tax code with a tax attorney when you're not an accountant or an attorney is brutal. It took a couple of years to do. Yeah. So that I did that because I wanted to clarify my thinking and give people something they could actually use that was based on fact, not fiction. A lot of people have a lot of commentary on blogs. I see this all the time, and people have their opinions. Even attorneys and accountants have opinions, and they put them on the website. And then I'll have clients that will literally call me and say, "Hey, I saw this thing. but that's different than what your book says. And I go, well, my book is based on the IRS code, and that's based on somebody's fantasy.
Yeah.
And so I just went deep into this space because it's a chance for people to actually design their future versus being controlled by a system and being in fear of their future. And that's what that's how it came to be, that I was able to say there's a better way than having a 401k and mutual funds, or even a self-directed IRA. And we're going to beat that up here in a minute. But it was the idea of giving your money to somebody, abdicating responsibility, and then smoking a bunch of hopium. Maybe you'll have money when you're 60 is literally the dumbest plan, unless you're Wall Street. Then it's the smartest play ever, because you make money off people and you feed on them like the Matrix.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that's a great segue. Why don't we dive into it, and maybe you can give us a 10,000 foot level overview of what a QRP is, and maybe talk a little bit more about what the eQRP is and what you guys offer.
So in general, when people are throwing around the term QRP, or even when you're looking at the book, it's really that's talking about qualified retirement plans. There is one QRP and there's one eQRP, and we happen to be the sole providers of both of them. And in general, when we're talking about qualified retirement plans, you're talking about 401ks, 457s, and all these are tax shelters. They're tax shelters that Congress said, hey, we know we're going to suck at providing for people when they're old, so we should probably incentivize them to behave differently by putting money away and giving that everybody a tax benefit. So it's really just, it's a part of the tax code that allows people to put significant chunks away. There's a different part of the code, which is where the IRAs live, and that's section 408. And that's a different thing. That's a totally different thing. These were all made up in 1973 with ERISA. This is how they were born. And they've been around for 50 years. People say, well, is this new? And I go, well, it's older than me, and I've been around long enough to be fully bald. So it's not new. It's just that you haven't heard about it because it's being squashed and basically ignored by Wall Street because it's not profitable to them. And so that, like I said, this is really just a tax shelter for people, and it's a way to grow your wealth without having to pay tax every year and just getting harvested by the tax system and Congress and the government.
Okay. Thank you for that. So there's quite a few investors that we work with that are really familiar with like a self-directed IRA. And that's where we even have investors in some of our syndications with CSQ properties that have invested with the self-directed IRA. They're now being encouraged about the QRP, but for the sake of this video, maybe you could walk me through how a QRP really is next level self-directed IRA.
Yeah, so the IRA is very limited. Anybody can have it, and so a lot of people default to it. There's also, it's a $10 trillion industry, so there's a lot of fees by custodians. So there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of affiliate relationships that are pretty sketchy. And so bottom line, people, that's what they think they're supposed to do. If I want to do something other than stocks, I should go to a self-directed IRA. Big differences are that you don't totally have control because they're still a custodian. And the biggest problem for IRAs compared to eQRP specifically is that an IRA, you're always going to have a tax if you do real estate that has debt. Well, real estate almost always has debt unless you're buying raw land for cash. But most times there's debt. It's why we like real estate. It's an amazing part of the leverage. So you end up with this 37% tax if you use an IRA. And I mean, people go, wait a second, that's like higher than the highest personal income tax. It's a brutal tax. It's the trust tax. So the IRA has that happen. The eQRP does not. And so people say, well, what is, can I get an eQRP? Well, yeah. And so there's a lot of confusion out there because people maybe they have a business with some people. Maybe they have a W-2 and they don't have a business. So people are trying to figure out what the rules are. The reality is anybody can have an eQRP because you can have as many different retirement plans as you want. And an eQRP works with or without employees. You cannot have an individual 401k like a lot of people are proposing if you have even part-time employees. And so people go, wait a second, I have one of these things, one of these solo type of plans, and I have some part-time employees. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's called a disqualified plan. So the rules changed a couple of years ago. And so the eQRP satisfies all the different environments that people are going to find themselves in. And it allows you to put in 10 times more money than an IRA. It allows you to actually be in control. There's no custodian. You're the trustee. So you have all these options and the control, and it can grow with you. Because let's be honest, if you're growing your business and your investments, you're probably going to have to hire somebody at some point to help you. eQRP is the only one of its kind that will allow you to do that. And so it's scalable. Like this is a pretty powerful thing. And people just don't really have an honest conversation in general when you look at the internet because everybody has an agenda. I mean, you and I both have an agenda. We want to share, we want to sell, we want to teach. It's everybody's got an agenda. I'm happy to tell you what my agenda is. It's to provide the most powerful, most dynamic tool, and then give people what they really want, not what they think they need because
Yep.
they've been pitched on a blog. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it's such a big dollar amount. This UBIT or the also the UDIT, I think it is the unrelated debt income tax, right? UDIT.
Yeah, the UDFI, the unrelated debt financed income, is what triggers the UBIT tax.
Yeah.
So
So, when I met you, I had a self-directed IRA and I'd been doing some real estate investments. And it's like nobody talks about that. And I went through two different custodians for a self-directed IRA. And I never knew about that until I met you. And to me, that was like a huge light bulb goes off. 37% of my leveraged portion gains from that investment is huge, especially for us, we invest in Los Angeles. Cap rates are pretty compressed, but our appreciation is really big. So all that growth on the appreciation from leveraged money is really big dollars. So for me personally, that was like a real eye-opening experience. And it caught me off guard. I mean, I've got my MBA, I've been investing for a long time, and I had no idea about this. And I know a lot of people don't know about that either. And like I said, I even have a few investors that are in self-directed IRAs, and I've since told them about this, and they know, and I know you've talked about it, that you can get out at any time as long as you're still in that investment, and then you'll be able to avoid paying those penalty taxes down the road. So they're still safe for now. And actually, one of them just signed up for the QRP. But anyways, I'm telling everybody, like, hey, self-directed IRAs are not all that they're built up to be. So this is great that you're sharing this information with us. I also got your infographic, which I'm going to put up on this video as well, so people can see. I thought that was a great overview of showing what you can invest in, what you can invest in, the dollar amounts and whatnot. So that's been super helpful as well. What about the differences? So QRP has been around since mid 1970s, and there's a lot of things that fall under the QRP program. But you've named your company the eQRP, which is your copyrighted name. And maybe you could walk me through the difference between a QRP and what you guys do, which is the enhanced QRP.
Well, really what we have out there are individual 401ks. They're called lots of different things. They're called solo 401ks, individual Ks. There's lots of things. All those are is 401ks for one person, and they're limited. They're basically a commodity. And then when you have an eQRP, it's not just a name. And it's funny because I've heard some of these people laughing on, people like to poo-poo on other people. And I'm like, well, it's a different thing. And it's easier just to laugh at somebody. And the reality is the eQRP is a totally different product that does different things. It has liability protection. Individual 401ks and IRAs don't have liability protection the way that big 401ks do. They're limited by the state that you're in. In California, it's a disaster. You could be sued. I mean, you can get sued for anything and everything. And they kind of, they say, take from the rich. So if you have money, prepare to be sued. And you don't have protection with an individual plan like you do with an eQRP. It's built differently. It has different layers of protection in. And this massive difference. You cannot hire anybody ever if you have a solo 401k, or what a lot of people are calling just QRPs because they like to borrow names that we've used. And so if you have an eQRP, you have the ability to have employees full-time, part-time, which you just don't have in the other space. The laws changed 2 years ago, and they said you cannot have a 401k of any type with part-time employees now. You have to include them. Well, individual solo 401ks, which people are calling QRPs, don't allow for that. You can't do it. If you look at most people's websites, it'll say this is only built for company owners and you can't have employees. Well, yeah, you can't. It says you can't have full-time employees. The law has changed. Now you can't even have part-time. Part-time 10 hours a week. So eQRP, part of the E is for employees. It allows you to have employees. It allows you to have, it has liability protection. It has privacy. You're literally going to be invisible to the world when you're using it. These are major differences. So I laugh back when I hear somebody saying, well, they're all the same thing. And the answer is no, they're not. You're misinformed and you're naive and you're delusional. And quite frankly, I think people are just jealous that they haven't built a better mousetrap.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it definitely helps pay dividends down the road. I remember when I was filling out all the paperwork with you guys, I don't know if it's called this, not a subscription agreement, but the
The adoption agreement.
Is it the adoption agreement? Like the 60 or 70 page agreement that goes through all the rules. And I know there's a lot of like things that you could decide on, or me individually can decide on in that subscription agreement. But it's a very long document. So I know, and I've seen a lot of documents. I know you guys did a lot of homework to get through that. And but there's a lot of decisions that could be made in that document on how you want to structure your plan. So it definitely is not a one size fit all plan from my experience.
It's not. It's customized to people based on their environment. And what we do is we give our client, we give you all the options available by the law. So your plan goes to the IRS first. You have an IRS letter that you get with your plan, and it's because the IRS has blessed it. They've said, okay, you're good. And so you have that, and then we make sure that we have, most 401ks don't provide all the options available by law. They provide whatever Wall Street wants to give you. They say, okay, here's what you can do. What they don't tell you is that you actually can do a whole lot more, but they don't want you to do anything that doesn't make them money. And so when a company set up 401ks, they generally are set up by companies that just give limited options because it's all about the fees.
Yeah.
And that eQRP is totally flexible for you to do basically anything you want. If it's available by law, it's in your plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been in my previous two companies, 401ks, and I had maybe 20 or 25 different options to choose from. And yeah, it's pretty miserable choices. And these are big plans too. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and they're a huge plan, and I had like no options. Versus now with the QRP, the sky is virtually endless. So that's been great. I do have both your books here, or I guess two of them, but the 2019 version and the 2021 version. Is there some significant differences between these two?
Yeah, I mean the rules change every year. Congress changes the amount that you can contribute. The numbers change. Rules like the employees change. So 2019 to 2021, major overhaul with the Secure Act. I mean, these things change the rules. So there's a lot of the stuff stays consistent, but then there's nuance. This is why literally you want to have, this is a team effort. It's so important to have people that are part of your team. The analogy I would say is if you think, okay, like, and we have people that do their own taxes, and I go, you're making a mistake because you're not that good. Even if you're a CPA, you want somebody that specializes in your thing. Your job is to be an investor. So people that say, well, I can go to 1-800-discount 401k and get something for cheap, you're going to get hammered because you're going to make a mistake. And the penalties are going to be 10 times whatever it costs to set something up with a boutique firm. When we set up a plan, there are humans, there's interaction, there's a lot of it. And it's a big difference. And so as things change, one of the things you want to know is they got my back. And I don't think that a bot or a commoditized place that sells you something for $100 or $1,000 really has your back. How could they possibly have your back? Because it's all got to be automated. That's how most things are going. So what we're finding is that in general, in business, more and more business thinking is that you have to automate everything. The problem is you can't automate thinking. Like it's like rough stuff. And then, how do you know if you're protected? So bottom line is that's a huge difference. It's a difference for any business, whether or not you're going to be high touch or whether you're going to be automated completely.
Gotcha. Okay. So if we have this great vehicle, QRP, how can we fund it?
So you've got a couple of different ways to get money into an eQRP or an IRA, any type of retirement account. If with an eQRP, you can roll money over, you can contribute. Any previous retirement accounts like IRAs, 401ks, thrift savings plans, any of that stuff can be rolled over once you've left the employer. In addition, if you have income that you're making, and this is active income, things from maybe 1099 income or Schedule C income, or you have a company that's an S Corp or an S elected LLC, and you're paying yourself a wage, all that type of income can be contributed. Basically, anything that you're getting, any income you're getting that's subject to Social Security tax, payroll tax, you can end up putting a chunk of that into your plan. Up to, in 2021, you can put up to $58,000 per person, or if you're over 50, you can put $64,500 in.
Wow, it's a lot more than the 7,000 with the IRA.
Yeah, and I mean that's just one person. When the eQRP, the way it's set up, you've got the ability to have it. If you have spouses, it's another $64,500 if you're over 50. If you've got kids, you can literally contribute it, get a tax deduction for your top line, which is your heaviest tax stuff, and you can give them income. People don't realize this, that if you have kids under 18, you can pay them up to $12,200 a year. no tax at all. There is no tax because the first tax bracket is 0 for up to 12.2, no
Yeah.
payroll tax. If you do it correctly, there's no payroll tax. That money can then be put into a Roth eQRP, which means it gets to grow tax-free and taken out tax-free. And what you put in there can be taken out at any point. The basis can always be taken out tax-free, penalty-free. So if you've got kids and you're not contributing 12,200, you're missing a major opportunity right now.
Yeah. Okay. What about normal W-2 income? If someone has a normal job, can they contribute that to the QRP as well?
So a W-2 for an employer for a company that you don't own would have to be the contribution would have to be for that company's plan. So when you look at any type of plan, so an eQRP has a sponsor. That's either you or it's your company that you own. If you're working for somebody and you have a W-2, the sponsor would be the company you work for, and they would have to have a 401k. So to answer the question, that income is generally not going to be contributed directly. You could fund an IRA and then roll it over if you wanted to. And so it'd be a backdoor way to get your W-2 money into an eQRP. So that's certainly an option.
Okay. But not Roth IRA money. You can't roll that over, right?
That's one of two things that are not eligible. Roth IRA money cannot be moved into anything other than a Roth IRA. And any inherited IRAs cannot be moved into anything other than another inherited IRA. And it's important because I hear a lot of people saying, well, I have a Roth. And I say, well, what is it? And they go, it's a Roth. And I go, is it a Roth 401k? Is it a Roth eQRP? Is it a Roth IRA? So there's really two types of retirement accounts. There's IRAs, and then there's everything else. And these are all defined contribution type of things. Yeah. The other one is a DB, which is a pension, but that's where you put a bunch of money in, like hundreds of thousands, and then you get a fixed amount. This is the old pensions that made all the companies go broke because it was very expensive. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, you've got really two things: IRAs and all the qualified retirement plans like eQRPs and 457s, those type of things that companies would have.
Got it. Okay, great. This has been super helpful. Maybe one more question here. Let's go over the top, like 3 or 4 highlighted or advantages of a QRP. I know we talked about the UBIT tax as a big one. What would you say are like the next 3 or 4 biggest advantages to a QRP, even contribution limits or whatnot, the biggest bullet points for the QRP?
Well, so with any qualified plan, you're generally going to have the ability to borrow, take up to $50,000 out of it if you wanted to. You can pull it out and then you pay it back over 5 years. And so it's a built-in credit line. You don't have that with an IRA. You can put 10 times as much money into any type of, in an eQRP, you can put 10 times as much money, maybe 40 times as much money, because if you have a family of 4, it's a lot more than an IRA for yourself. So you've got those advantages. You actually have control over an IRA. You have a custodian. So an eQRP, you're going to be in control with the checkbook. You drive the ship. You get to choose where it goes. You've got liability protection that is actually going to protect you, and you're anonymous. So you're not a sitting duck waiting to get sued. You've got the ability to use this for a company, build a company with people. So whether it's part-time, full-time, I mean, it's a pretty long list. If you buy physical gold, you can keep the gold. You don't have to have it in a depository. It's flexible. An IRA requires it by law. You have to keep it with a depository. So if you wanted to buy crypto, you want to buy Bitcoin, you can buy it, and you're the trustee, so you can control where that crypto sits. It's massive control, liability protection, anonymity, the power to borrow. I mean, the list goes on and on. When you compare them side by side, it's like, why would you ever choose an IRA? I just don't understand why somebody would do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I had to deal with the custodian, it was a real pain in the butt. I mean, it would take forever to get the form signed. And then I checked the wrong box here, did something wrong there, and it would be delayed. And now, you talk about checkbook control is, just it's a euphemism for, being able to do what you want when you want. And for me, it's just wiring, okay, I want to make this investment. I wire the money that day and it's done. And I don't need to go through all those other steps. I mean, that alone was a huge savings for me.
The brain damage involved with trying to get things done with a custodian is, I've never heard anybody say I had an amazing experience. Yeah. Sometimes it's not bad. Yeah. But when you start doing a lot of transactions, there are delays because you've got people processing, and it's all about their regulations and their internal controls, and it's friction. And you don't have any of that friction when you have an eQRP, because you have the ability to write a check or wire. You sign because you're the trustee. Super fast, super efficient, and then you can live your life. Yeah, true. Well, this has been great. This is super helpful. If people are already interested, I'm already sold, but if other people are interested, how can they hear about you guys or get in touch with you? Well, I mean, if you want to, if you're like watching this, you're listening to this on your phone, the easiest way is to text the word eQRP to 72,000, and you can get a copy of the book. I think you have a website, don't you, to be able to
Yeah,
give
so
people?
we have an affiliate link which I'll post as well, which is CSQ Properties is an affiliate referral for you guys, but also that they texting you would work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever, and really, when you think about it, and your experience, I presume, is the same thing. But when you're curious about this, it's an education process because this isn't for everybody. I mean, sometimes people will call in and we go through some questions to figure out if it's the right fit, and it's not the right fit for everybody.
Yeah,
Sometimes, unfortunately, in finance and insurance, I've see too many people that say, well, whatever I'm selling is the right fit for everybody. And to me, that's being delusional and just a
yeah,
bad fiduciary of your stuff and your clients. So ultimately it's an exploratory process. If you're curious and you're like, well, I have an IRA with some real estate in it, maybe I should learn about this. We can fix that. We'll at least fix your knowledge so that you're not setting yourself up for an explosion called tax.
yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely one that likes to learn a lot. I read the whole book before I finally signed up with you guys. I know the book is free, right? So they can reach out to you to get a free copy of the book.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, we're gonna educate you. There's no 7.95 for shipping type of thing. It's literally we're gonna shoot it out to you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Damion, thank you so much. I know you're a wealth of knowledge in the space, and thank you for everything you're doing for investors. And thanks for spending the time with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate you having me.
I really am amazed at how many investors I talk to who know about self-directed IRAs, but don't know anything about QRPs. As you can see, there's a huge difference between the two. I'd encourage you to learn more. Reach out to Damion at eQRP Company, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks for watching.